also reports this week that the King is absolutely desperate to see his grandkids, Archie and Lilibet.
4 pages. That's all it was. 4 pages submitted to the HM Passport Office requesting the renewal of 2 British passports. Simple, routine, unremarkable, unless you know whose names are on those documents. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. And buried inside that application, a single demand that has detonated one of the most explosive constitutional confrontations in modern royal history. 3 letters, HRH. And the Crown's answer has shaken Montecito to its absolute foundations. Because here's what you need to understand before we go any further. This is not a story about a passport renewal. This is not even a story about 2 children. This is the story of a monarchy drawing its final line in the sand, and a couple on the other side of the Atlantic who have just discovered exactly how far that line extends. Tonight, we are pulling back every curtain, exposing every angle, and walking you through the full anatomy of what is now being called the Great Severing. By the time this is over, you will understand why King Charles III made the decision he made, why Prince Harry is reportedly shattered and broken, why Princess Anne, the quiet, iron-willed enforcer of the Windsor machine, has become the most feared woman in the British establishment, and why 2 innocent children are now caught at the center of a constitutional storm they did not create and cannot control. Stay with us, because this one changes everything. The demand that started the fire. Let's go back to where this erupted. Under the direct supervision of Meghan Markle's high-powered legal team, and with the documented backing of Prince Harry, a formal demand was delivered to both the HM Passport Office and the Privy Council. On its surface, the application requested the straightforward renewal of Archie and Lilibet's British travel documents. But embedded within the filing was a clause that sent immediate shockwaves through royal circles, a demand for the HRH, His Royal Highness and Her Royal Highness, prefix to appear on both children's official passports. Now stop and think about that for a moment. These are passports, government-issued identity documents, and the Sussex legal team was insisting that the British state certify both children as Royal Highnesses for international travel purposes. Why does that matter so much? Because an HRH designation on a passport is not decorative. It is not ceremonial. It is legally transformative. It reclassifies the passport holder from a private individual into something far more consequential in the eyes of international law. A state asset, an internationally protected person. And with that classification comes an entire infrastructure of state-funded obligations that the Sussex team understood perfectly well before they put pen to paper. The deadline attached to this demand was not gentle. Meghan's legal representatives issued an ultimatum to Princess Anne, who oversees formal title recognition and royal administrative protocols alongside the Royal Council, requiring full resolution no later than March 29th. And if that wasn't aggressive enough, the legal team went considerably further. They threatened the palace with accusations of institutional obstruction. Deliberate harassment. And most provocatively of all, they claimed that by withholding the HRH designation, the Crown was actively endangering the physical safety of the King's own grandchildren. Ask yourself this: was that a legal argument, or was it a calculated piece of public relations ammunition held carefully in reserve, ready to be fired at the media the moment the palace said no? We'll come back to that question, because the answer reveals a great deal about what this entire campaign was truly designed to achieve. The Crown fires back. Princess Anne leads the charge. Buckingham Palace, operating under the increasingly steely and unified leadership of King Charles III and Prince William, did not blink. Their response was coordinated, clinical, and devastating in its precision, and it came through a voice that the Sussex team had severely underestimated: Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. Anne's counter-argument did not engage emotionally. It engaged strategically, and what she exposed was the practical machinery behind the Sussex demand, machinery that the palace viewed as a calculated attempt to extract state resources for a private commercial venture, disguised as a family safety concern. Here is what HRH status on Archie and Lilibet's passports would have triggered the moment those children touched Australian soil. First, RAVEC-level security, the absolute gold standard of royal protection, provided by the Australian Federal Police around the clock, armed and operational, funded entirely by Australian taxpayers. Second, diplomatic immunity and priority processing at every port of entry, bypassing standard customs and immigration protocols entirely. Third, state logistics, official motorcades, secure government-sanctioned accommodation, and the full ceremonial infrastructure normally reserved for sovereign representatives conducting official state business. Anne's argument was simple and lethal. The Sussex family had scheduled a private healing and meditation retreat in Australia for April. VVIP tickets were reportedly priced at upwards of $5,000 each. The event was being commercially marketed with materials that subtly implied it carried the backing of a royal engagement. And yet the legal demand being placed before the Crown was effectively asking the British and Australian governments to provide hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of state-funded security and diplomatic hospitality to protect the hosts of a luxury paid-entry wellness tour. A palace source close to Anne reportedly summarized it in terms that were both elegant and damning. To demand the perks of a sovereign's representative for a paid-entry commercial event is not a breach of protocol. It is a betrayal of the Crown's integrity. There was a second layer to Anne's counteroffensive that the Sussex camp may not have anticipated. She addressed the birth certificate argument head-on. Meghan's legal team had pointed to the 2021 alteration of Archie's birth certificate, in which Rachel Meghan was replaced with Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, as proof that the palace had previously insisted on the use of royal titles, effectively establishing a precedent they were now trying to walk back. Anne reportedly dismantled this argument with precision. The 2021 changes were made for historical record consistency. They were not a grant of commercial privilege. They were not authorization for the use of royal styling in private business contexts 5 years down the line. The mantra of the post-exit era was repeated with what sources described as devastating finality. No longer working royals. No longer HRH. What is this really about? The commercial empire behind the demand. Now here is where we have to move beyond the headlines and into the real architecture of this conflict. Because this was never simply about two children's passports. This was about a brand, a strategy, and a financial model that depends on a very specific narrative to function at the premium price points Meghan has built her business around. By early 2026, Meghan's lifestyle brand, as ever, the evolved successor to American Riviera Orchard, had fully transitioned from a digital teaser campaign into a multi-million-dollar commercial operation. Products ranged from luxury organic jams and artisanal homeware to wellness kits and meditation programming. And at the core of the brand's premium positioning was a single aesthetic: exiled royalty. The idea that you were purchasing something connected to the bloodline of a 1,000-year-old throne, not just a jar of jam, but access to a kind of displaced majesty. Critics of the brand had begun pointing to a structural vulnerability in this model. Without the HRH prefix actively associated with Archie and Lilibet in their public profiles, the children are celebrity children. Wealthy, notable, photographed at strategic moments, but ultimately, celebrity children in a saturated market. With the HRH, they become something categorically different: disinherited heirs to the British throne. And that narrative sells globally, at scale, at premium price points that a standard celebrity brand simply cannot command. A leaked internal memo from the as-ever digital infrastructure, reportedly exposed through a system breach on March 25th, appeared to confirm this dependency explicitly. The brand's valuation, estimated internally at $36 million, was described in the document as contingent on the royal aura of the children. Princess Anne seized on this leak immediately. Her argument before the Royal Council became even sharper and more pointed. The Sussex family was not asking the British and Australian governments to protect two vulnerable children from genuine threats. They were asking the tax-paying public to subsidize a $36 million private empire
in celebrating the 125th anniversary of women's suffrage in your country,
by providing state-funded security at a private commercial retreat that charged that same public $3,000 to $5,000 a ticket for entry. The palace's position calcified into something immovable. This was not a safety argument. This was a brand strategy, and the crown would not serve as its silent investor. Harry's torment, the man caught between two worlds. Amid the legal warfare and the institutional maneuvering, there is a deeply human story at the center of this crisis. And it is not a comfortable one, because by all credible accounts, Prince Harry is not the one driving this campaign. He is being driven by it, and the psychological toll, according to those close to him, has become genuinely severe. Harry's documented trauma regarding his mother's death is well established. The failure of royal protection in the final hours of Princess Diana's life is a wound that has never fully healed in the decades since. His long legal battles to secure government-funded protection for himself and his family are not cynical tactics. They appear to reflect a genuine and visceral fear that lives permanently in his chest. A man haunted by what happened to his mother, desperately attempting to build a security architecture around his own children so history cannot repeat itself. But here is the cruel paradox that insiders say has left Harry paralyzed and unable to act. The legal strategy his wife's team is pursuing is not making a security resolution more likely. It is making it measurably less likely. Every confrontational filing, every ultimatum, every threat of obstruction lawsuits makes a private reconciliation with Prince William, the only person whose cooperation could realistically produce a workable long-term security arrangement, functionally impossible. Harry reportedly understands this, and he is said to be beginning to understand it far too late to change course. Those close to the situation describe Harry as caught in what they call a psychological pincer movement. On one side, his trauma, his fear for his children's lives, his desperate wish that the institutional armor of the monarchy could somehow still protect them even from the outside. On the other, the palace, as of late March, has reportedly seen no evidence that Harry has attempted to separate himself from the legal offensive, which means, in the Crown's eyes, he has endorsed it, and that endorsement has consequences. Consider what Harry's silence in the face of this campaign communicates to the men and women who once fought alongside him in the military, who respected the Duke's directness and sense of honor above all else. A man who built his public identity on authenticity and courage is being seen by those inside the palace as unable or unwilling to rein in a legal strategy that is systematically destroying every remaining bridge to his family. People close to William have reportedly noted that if Harry had just called person to person, the entire trajectory of this confrontation might have looked very different, but that call has not come, and the silence has been deafening. The Succession Amendment Bill, the legislative guillotine, and now we arrive at the most explosive development in this entire saga, something far larger and more permanent than a passport dispute, something that will define the future of Archie and Lilibet not just for the next few months, but potentially for the rest of their lives. Behind the scenes at Westminster and Buckingham Palace, an accelerated legislative process has been set in motion, the Succession Amendment Bill 2026. Its public catalyst was the criminal fallout surrounding Prince Andrew, the February 2026 arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, that shook the establishment to its core. But the bill's architects appear to have been far-sighted enough to include a provision that goes well beyond Andrew, a provision that the Sussex family's ongoing behavior has provided the perfect political justification to introduce. The clause in question establishes what is being described internally as an active service requirement. Under this rule, a place in the line of succession must be earned and actively maintained through genuine engagement with the royal institution. To qualify, an heir must be domiciled within the United Kingdom or its territories and must function as a working royal. The implications for Archie, currently sixth in line to the throne, by being raised as private citizens in the United States and participating in commercial ventures through the As Ever brand, they would be legally reclassified as inactive heirs. Their names would remain in the history books. Their faces would appear in no formal state calendar. They would become, in the language now circulating through the British establishment, ghost heirs. Princess Anne has been described as the chief strategist making the case for this legislation within the Privy Council. Her argument, delivered in closed sessions, reportedly used the April Australian healing retreat as the primary and most devastating exhibit in the case for the bill, and a victim of the Crown on a Tuesday to demand taxpayer security. The argument for legislative action rested on a single devastating logic. If the Sussex family is actively using royal titles for private commercial profit, they are no longer state assets. And if they are not state assets, they cannot legitimately hold a place in the functional line of succession to the British throne. On the 23rd of March 2026, RAVEC, the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures, delivered its own crushing blow. The committee ruled that since the HRH styles of Harry and Meghan are in abeyance, non-active, effectively suspended, those styles cannot legally be passed to their children for use on official travel documents. Without HRH on their passports, Archie and Lilibet travel as high-profile private citizens. No automatic state funding, no British or Australian taxpayer money allocated for armed protection, full private liability for any and all security costs during the April tour, and in the eyes of international law, American resident civilians, subject to standard searches and standard legal jurisdictions. The Edinburgh Contrast, a masterclass in royal messaging. Throughout this entire confrontation, Princess Anne has deployed one rhetorical weapon with particular consistency and devastating effect: the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Edward and Sophie, and their children, Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex. The Edinburgh children hold royal titles. They are grandchildren of the late Queen Elizabeth II. They have a legitimate claim to royal status that is in every structural sense comparable to Archie and Lilibet's position, and yet they have chosen a path that could not be more different from the one the Sussex brand is pursuing. Lady Louise has taken regular employment in London. She traveled to Australia on a private trip not long ago as an ordinary citizen, waiting in the standard immigration queue, carrying her own luggage, purchasing a commercial flight like anyone else. James is building a professional life without demanding the armored infrastructure of state protection. Neither has leveraged their royal connection for commercial advantage. Neither has issued ultimatums to the Privy Council. Neither has threatened the Crown with legal action over a title. Anne's use of this contrast is not accidental, and it is not gentle. It is precise. The Edinburgh model, she has repeatedly argued, teaches the next generation that a title is a weight of duty and not a golden ticket to a private jet. It demonstrates that royal status, at its most authentic, is defined by what you give to the nation, not what you demand the nation provides to your passport or your security detail. And by holding the Edinburgh family up as the standard against which the Sussex strategy is measured, Anne has made the public calculus brutally clear. Choose service, and the institution protects you. Choose commerce, and the institution records your choice and responds accordingly. The British public has noticed. The contrast has registered powerfully. And in Australia, where the Sussex brand has been counting on goodwill built during a celebrated 2018 tour, the reception has shifted significantly. A petition titled "No Taxpayer Funding or Official Support for Harry and Meghan's Private Visit" surpassed 36,000 signatures within days. Comment sections on major Australian newspapers became so hostile that moderators were forced to shut them down entirely, an almost unprecedented step for royal news coverage. The warm welcome of 2018 has been replaced by clinical scrutiny, and the Sussex camp has responded by calling the petition misinformation. But the damage, as those inside the palace walls have noted with quiet satisfaction, is done. The optics war has extended even to Archie's upcoming 7th birthday on May 6th, while the Sussex family will likely release a carefully curated private photograph of Archie to mark the occasion, styled and released on their own terms to their own audience. The King will simultaneously be hosting thousands of citizens at Buckingham Palace for the garden party season, celebrating the service of the British state. This scheduling contrast is no accident. It is a deliberate institutional message, delivered without a single spoken word. The monarchy's calendar belongs to those who work, not those who watch from across the Atlantic. The Royal Seal War, William's silent counteroffensive. While the Passport War dominated headlines, something equally significant was unfolding on a parallel track. a commercial counteroffensive so elegantly executed that it barely required a press release. Prince William, with the full backing of King Charles III, has taken a decisive step in redefining the boundaries of what authentic royal endorsement actually means in 2026. As of this week, King Charles has officially delegated one of the monarchy's most potent economic tools to his heir apparent, the authority to grant royal warrants. This is not a symbolic gesture. Royal warrants, the right to bear the royal arms on a product or business, are among the most commercially valuable endorsements in global trade. They represent centuries of tradition, state sanction, and the kind of institutional legitimacy that no amount of marketing spend can manufacture from scratch. And William and Catherine are now personally empowered to grant or withhold them as they see fit. Think carefully about what this means in the context of the brand war currently being waged from Montecito. While Meghan works to use the Duchess title and her children's prince and princess status to lend commercial credibility to luxury jams and wellness programming, William has become the literal gatekeeper of authentic royal quality. A product bearing William's warrant carries the backing of the British state, the current government, and the unbroken weight of a functioning monarchy. And as ever, product carries the aesthetic of exiled royalty, a narrative that is increasingly dependent on a palace that has now decided, firmly and finally, to stop playing along. The Netflix separation has compounded the pressure considerably. Earlier this month, the streaming giant confirmed it would no longer be involved in Meghan's lifestyle brand, leaving the Duchess to fund and manage as ever entirely independently. This commercial divorce has made the HRH passport status not merely desirable but, according to analysts closely following the brand, a near survival necessity. Without the royal aura attached to the children's public profiles, the premium pricing model becomes extraordinarily difficult to sustain. The brand risks being repositioned in the market as another celebrity wellness project in an already oversaturated space. On the official royal website, the contrast is visible in stark institutional terms. Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet remain listed in the line of succession, 6th and 7th respectively, but their profiles are strikingly bare. No personal details, no recent photographs, no mention of the HRH style. They appear as what palace sources have begun calling ghost heirs, present in the record, entirely invisible in the living institution. Meanwhile, the palace has significantly increased the visibility of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, investing in imagery, public appearances, and narrative positioning that signals clearly and unmistakably where the monarchy's future is being constructed. The functional title doctrine, the legal bedrock. In the final days before the March 29th deadline, a leaked internal memo from the Home Office, reportedly drafted in direct consultation with Princess Anne, provided the constitutional foundation for the palace's refusal. Legal analysts have been calling it the functional title doctrine, and it is airtight. The Crown's position rests on this principle. A passport is a state document issued by the government of the United Kingdom. To include HRH on such a document, the individual in question must be an active representative of that state. They must perform state duties. They must operate within the institutional framework of the monarchy in an official capacity that the government can legitimately certify. Archie and Lilibet do not perform state duties. They do not represent the British government in any official function whatsoever. They live in California as private residents of the United States of America. Therefore, under the UK Passports Act, the government cannot legally certify them as Royal Highnesses for international travel. This is not harassment, as Meghan's legal team has repeatedly claimed. It is the straightforward application of a doctrine as old as the institution itself. Titles are tools of service, not accessories of identity. They exist to facilitate the work of the state, not to enhance the commercial prospects of those who have voluntarily chosen to walk away from that work. The Sussex team's counter-argument, that withholding the HRH constitutes endangerment, does not hold constitutional water, and the palace knows it. Meghan's legal team has not accepted this framework. They have characterized the palace's position as a deliberate institutional exclusion designed to erase her children's legacy before they are even old enough to choose their own path. But the palace's response is measured and clear. The children will reach adulthood. At that point, they will be entirely free to choose their future. If they choose service, genuine, sustained, institutionally embedded royal service, the full weight of the monarchy's support becomes available to them. If they choose the path their parents have chosen, the Crown's position is and will remain what it has always been. No longer working royals, no longer HRH. The door is not locked, but it will not be opened by a legal ultimatum. Meghan's pivot, the rejection as marketing tool. Inside Montecito, the atmosphere in late March has been described by multiple sources as a pressure cooker approaching maximum stress. Harry is said to be reeling. The realization that his children may become the first direct descendants of a sovereign to be legislated out of the succession in modern British history has reportedly struck him with the force of something final and irreversible, something that cannot be undone with a phone call or a legal filing. The divergence between Harry and Meghan's responses to this moment appears to be deepening the rift within the Montecito household itself. While Meghan reportedly views the palace's refusal as a systemic attack that must be publicly and aggressively opposed, Harry is said to be questioning whether the war is still winnable, and whether winning it would even produce the outcome he actually wants. What Harry wants, at his core, is not an HRH on a passport. It is safety. It is the knowledge that his children will not be exposed to the same dangers that consumed his mother. And the brutal irony that insiders keep returning to is this: the aggressive legal campaign being waged in his name is making that safety less likely with every filing, not more. Meghan, by all accounts, is responding very differently. Rather than softening the campaign in the face of the palace's absolute constitutional silence, she is reportedly preparing a calculated pivot. If the HRH cannot be secured for the passports, her legal team has been briefed to prepare what sources describe as a scorched earth public relations campaign. The rejection itself will be reframed and weaponized. The denial will become the narrative. The Crown's constitutionally grounded refusal will be packaged and deployed as evidence of systemic exclusion, not as a legal determination rooted in centuries of established constitutional principle, but as a deliberate act of institutional prejudice against a woman, her mixed-race children, and a family that dared to demand equal treatment from a system designed to deny it. And here is the uncomfortable reality that the palace's strategists understand clearly. This pivot may generate significant media oxygen. It may produce headlines across global outlets. It may drive engagement and genuine sympathy in certain markets, but it will not produce a state motorcade. It will not produce taxpayer-funded armed protection. It will not produce an HRH on a travel document. In the world of global diplomacy and constitutional law, according to Australian government statements, as private citizens of a private commercial venture, whatever security that affords them, funded from private accounts, not public ones. There is also a broader question that this confrontation has forced the British public to grapple with, one that goes well beyond the Sussex family and the Windsor dynasty. What is a monarchy for? In the 21st century, with digital platforms and global celebrity culture reshaping what influence and prestige mean, is there still a place for an institution that operates on the principle of selfless, uncompensated public service? King Charles III has bet his reign on the answer being yes. Prince William has structured his entire strategy around the same conviction. The slimmed-down monarchy is not just an administrative choice, it is a philosophical statement, a declaration that the Crown's value to the British people rests not in its glamour, not in its celebrity, not in the global fascination with its personal dramas, but in its willingness to show up, day after day, without a ticket price attached. That is the monarchy Charles and William are building, and the Sussex family's choices have given them the contrast they needed to make the case. And when they are old enough to understand what happened in the spring of 2026, they will have to make sense of a situation shaped entirely by choices made long before they could form their own opinions about any of it. The great question, the one that no legal filing can answer and no passport office ruling can resolve, is what those choices will ultimately mean for them as adults who can finally speak for themselves. Will they choose service? Will they seek reinstatement? Will they find an institution waiting for them with open arms? Or will they find gates deadbolted by a future king who built a slimmer, sharper, more deliberate monarchy in their absence? That question does not have an answer yet, but the constitutional machinery now in motion is ensuring that when it does, the answer will be entirely their own to give. The Crown has drawn its line. The Sussex family has drawn theirs. And two children, aged 6 and 4, are somewhere in between, princes and princesses of a realm that has, for all functional and institutional purposes, turned its back on the path their parents chose for them. The gates of Buckingham Palace are not merely closed, they have been deadbolted. The keys are with William. The great severing is complete, and as the sun sets over Montecito, the healing retreat in Australia is approaching. Without the HRH, without the motorcade, without diplomatic immunity, and without the Crown's blessing, a rebel does not get a police escort. And the Australian government's synchronized statements, distancing themselves entirely from the April visit, make clear that the rebel framing will find little purchase in the halls of Canberra. The Great Severing. What happens now? Let's bring everything into focus, because the March 29th deadline has come and gone, and the palace has not blinked, not wavered, and not softened its position by a single degree. Every signal from Buckingham Palace, from Westminster, from the Australian government, and from the Commonwealth machinery that undergirds the British state, points in one direction. The Great Severing, as historians are now beginning to call it, is not coming. It is here, and it has dimensions that extend far beyond a passport dispute or even a succession amendment. This is a generational reckoning, a defining constitutional moment that will shape the monarchy for decades. King Charles III and Prince William have made a unified choice. The slimmed-down monarchy, leaner, more purposeful, more tightly bound to the principle that titles are earned through service and not inherited by association with someone who abandoned that service, is the model they have committed to and will defend. Every decision made in the last month has reinforced that commitment. The royal warrants delegated to William, the Ravec ruling on HRH status, the Home Office memo establishing the functional title doctrine, the succession amendment bill accelerating through Parliament. These are not reactive moves. They are the architecture of a deliberate institutional transformation. And the Sussex family, by pursuing its legal campaign with the aggressiveness it has chosen, has provided the political justification for every single one of them. Archie Harrison is 6 years old. Lilibet Diana is 4. They did not choose this conflict. They did not file legal ultimatums or demand VVIP motorcades. They are children. And that is perhaps the most painful truth at the heart of this entire saga. They are growing up in a world where their titles are simultaneously viewed as commercial assets by their parents in California and constitutional liabilities by their grandfather in London, where their grandfather's institution is legislating their place in history while their mother's brand team is calculating their market value in spreadsheets. They will travel to Australia in April as the children of a celebrity couple, not as representatives of the king, not under diplomatic immunity, not in a motorcade. They will enter the country, but with every camera in the world watching, and with a question that hangs unanswered in the air over both continents. Was it worth it? Because whatever happens next, one thing is certain. The House of Sussex and the House of Windsor are no longer fighting over titles. They are fighting over history. And history, as Princess Anne understands better than anyone alive, belongs to those who show up. So there you have it, the full anatomy of the most consequential royal confrontation of the modern era. 3 letters, a 4-page application, and a constitutional earthquake that has redefined the relationship between the Sussex family and the British throne, perhaps permanently and irreversibly. The question that keeps coming back, that I genuinely cannot stop thinking about, is this. Was there a version of this story where it ended differently? Where a quiet, private resolution preserved the children's status without the ultimatums, the scorched earth legal threats, and the PR campaigns? Could Harry have picked up the phone? Could a conversation, just a real conversation without lawyers in the room, have changed anything? We genuinely want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the palace made the right constitutional call? Could Harry have stopped this if he truly wanted to? And most importantly, do Archie and Lilibet deserve better than to be caught in the crossfire of their parents' choices, paying the price for decisions made before they were old enough to understand what a passport even is? If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay close. Because this story is far from over, and we will be right here with you every step of the way. The Crown has spoken clearly. The real question is whether anyone in Montecito is truly listening.